They stopped sending food to the outbuilding on a Thursday. I know it was Thursday because I do the grounds rotation on Thursdays. The eastern terraces, the ornamental canal, the storage sheds along the back wall where the estate keeps tools and seed stock, and as of that week, one small alien child nobody wanted to claim. I found her sitting on an overturned clay pot, knees pulled up, watching the door. She had been there long enough that the light through the high window had moved across the floor and left her behind in the shade. I set down my pruning shears, I said, in the flat trade tongue that passes for courtesy between humans and Vareth. When did you last eat? She didn't answer. She just looked at me with those silver eyes. The Vareth have eyes like still water, pale and deep at the same time, and I could see she was doing the math on me the way children do when every adult so far has been bad news, deciding whether I was one more version of the same. I went to my carry sack and gave her half my lunch. Flatbread and a tin of preserved meat is not what a Vareth child eats, but she ate it anyway, carefully, without hurrying. That told me more than she probably meant to tell me. You don't eat unfamiliar food carefully, unless you've been hungry enough times to know that you might not get more. Her name was Seti. She was small, even for a Vareth child, with the lavender skin of the secondary household and silver hair she'd braided herself, badly. Her mother had been the third wife of the minor lord Arath, Varath, and when the political arrangement that brought the mother to this estate collapsed 3 months prior, the mother had been quietly sent back to her family of origin. Seti had not gone with her. I learned this later. At the time, I only knew that there was a child in the outbuilding who had not been fed. I went to the head steward that evening. His name was Ossian, tall Vareth with the gray-green coloring of the administrative caste, and he had never liked me. Most of them hadn't. I'd been brought on 18 months earlier as a groundskeeper after the previous human crew left under circumstances that are not mine to explain, except to say that I had been the one standing in a corridor when the Lord's second son decided to take his temper out on someone smaller. I had stopped him. The someone smaller was Vareth. I was human. The second son was the second son. The outcome of that was that I kept my position but lost any standing I'd had. And Ossian referred to me in the third person when I was in the room, as though I were a problem someone else had caused. I told him the child in the eastern outbuilding had not been fed in 3 days. He looked at the wall behind my left shoulder and said that that child's maintenance was not currently assigned to any household budget line, and that the situation was under review. I said, she's hungry today, not under review. He said that I should return to my duties. I returned to my duties. I also brought Seti dinner from my own rations that night, and breakfast the next morning, and I did not tell Ossian because Ossian had made the situation clear, and I saw no reason to discuss it further with him. I want to be precise about what I felt during those days, because people have asked me since, and I don't think I've answered well. I wasn't angry yet. I was just doing the obvious thing. There was a child who needed to eat, and I was there, and no one else was acting, so I acted. That's the whole of it. I'm not sure it requires a more complicated explanation than that. On the 6th day, a ground vehicle arrived from House Karan. I knew House Karan by reputation. On this colonial world, the Vareth and Karan houses had been circling each other for 2 generations over a belt of mineral rights in the Northern Territories, and in the past year House Karan had been acquiring Vareth assets the way a tide acquires sand, slowly, without ceremony, leaving less behind each time. The envoy who stepped out of the vehicle was a Karan administrator named Peleth, and he walked to the main house with the easy stride of someone who already considers the furniture his. I heard what was said because the garden runs close to the study window, and I was trimming the hedge outside it at the time. I am not going to pretend I wasn't listening. I was absolutely listening. The arrangement as discussed between Peleth and Ossian was that Seti would be relocated to a Karan processing facility on the eastern continent, classified as a dependent ward of an absorbed household. In practical terms, this meant she would disappear in Karan's administrative structure, which is not a place children come back out of on their own. There was a phrase Ossian used. The child has no current advocate, and Peleth received it with the tone of a man ticking a box. Down my shears. I went to my quarters. I opened the colonial charter on my work terminal. I am not a lawyer. I was a groundskeeper before this posting, and a construction laborer before that. And the only reason I knew about the Human Welfare Amendment to the Colonial Charter was that a woman named Bricks, who worked the docks, told me about once years ago in the context of a dispute over workers' housing. The amendment, Article 44, subsection 7 of the Colonial Labor and Welfare Provisions, states that any human worker in formal occupational residence on a Verith-administered colonial property may register a declaration of protective care over any minor individual in their direct and demonstrable care, pending review by the colonial registrar. The declaration carries an automatic 48-hour administrative hold on any transfer, relocation, change of custody of the named individual. The amendment was written by humans for humans. In the early years of the colonial administrations, when the Verith were still deciding whether humans were worth the paperwork, no Verith lawyer had ever looked at it hard because it had never been used to cover a Verith child. There was nothing in the text that said it couldn't. I filed the declaration at 11:40 in the evening. I listed my name, my occupational registration, my residential address on the estate grounds, and Seti's name as the individual in my direct care. I attached 6 days of records, the meals I'd brought, the times I'd documented her condition, a note from my own logbook about the state of the outbuilding. The Colonial Registrar's automated system accepted the filing, issued a confirmation number, and sent a copy to the estate's administrative address and to the House Coran Envoy's registered contact. 48-hour hold began at 11:41. I sat there for a while after, not celebrating, just sitting. Then I went to the outbuilding, and I told Seti, in the flattest trade tongue I could manage, that she was going to stay where she was for at least 2 more days, and that I would bring her breakfast in the morning, and that if anyone came to the door before I arrived, she should say that she was under registered protective care and give them the confirmation number, which I wrote on the inside of her wrist in permanent marker. She looked at the number. Then she looked at me. "Why?" she said. It was the first full word I'd heard her say. I thought about it honestly. "Because you were in the shed," I said, "and you were hungry, and I was there." She considered this for a long moment with those still water eyes. Then she lay down on the blanket I'd brought her 2 days prior and went to sleep. Peleth's men came at first light. There were 2 of them, large and professionally courteous in the way that people are when they expect no resistance. I was standing in the doorway of the outbuilding when they arrived. I had my work terminal in my hand with the declaration on screen and a live uplink to the Colonial Registrar's public verification portal, which displays active holds as a matter of public administrative record. I said, "Declaration of Protective Care, registered under Article 44, subsection 7 of the Colonial Labor and Welfare Provisions. Information number 7, Verith 4412 Solace. The 48-hour hold is active. Any transfer of the named individual during the hold period constitutes a violation of colonial administrative law and triggers an automatic audit of all asset transfers conducted by any party to this registration in the preceding 90 days. The second part about the audit was something I had read at 2 in the morning and decided to include because House Coran had been conducting a great many asset transfers in the preceding 90 days, and I doubted very much that they wanted an audit. The 2 men looked at each other. They looked at my terminal. They went back to their vehicle and had a long, quiet conversation. Then they left. Ossian came to find me an hour later. He was angrier than I had ever seen a Verith allow themselves to be in front of a human worker, which told me I had landed somewhere that mattered. He said that I had involved the colonial administration in a private household matter. He said that my position on the estate was contingent on the goodwill of the household. He said a number of other things. I let him finish. Then I said, "The 48-hour hold gives you time to assign the child's care to a proper household budget line and name a Verith advocate for work, at which point my declaration becomes redundant and I withdraw it. That's the cleanest resolution for everyone." He stared at me for a long time. He left without answering. By the end of the 48 hours, Seti had been formally assigned to the Minor Households Dependent Registry with a monthly care allocation and a named Verith advocate from the estate's administrative staff. It wasn't love. It wasn't what she deserved. But it was a file with her name on it that House Karin couldn't absorb around. And it was a door that locked from the inside. And it was breakfast brought every morning until the situation resolved itself into something more permanent. I was dismissed from the estate 4 months later, when Lord Arath Verath died and his holdings were consolidated and there was a reduction in ground staff. This was not, I was told, related to the incident with the declaration. I did not push on that point. I found other work. I didn't think about SETI often, or rather I tried not to, because thinking about her meant wondering whether the people left in charge of her were doing the obvious thing, and I had no way to know. 11 years later, I got a message on my work terminal. Short, in clean trade tongue, no preamble. I am a second-year student at the Verath Colonial Medical Institute. I remembered your confirmation number until I was 9, then I wrote it in a book. I have been trying to find you for 2 years. I wanted you to know that I remember the shed and the flatbread and what you said about why. I think about it when things are hard, SETI. I read it twice, then I sent back 4 words. I'm glad you stayed. That's what it cost. Not very much in the end. A few meals, a night of reading, standing in a doorway. I'd do it again before breakfast.